The wind on Vareth 4 carried the smell of iron and burning wood. And Laura Bennett stood at the edge of the medical station watching the twin suns sink below the horizon like wounds in the sky. She had been on this frontier world for 6 months now, serving as a field medic at the Joint Diplomatic Outpost where humanity tried to keep peace between species that had been killing each other for thousands of years. It was the most dangerous assignment available, and that was exactly why she had volunteered for it. The outpost sat in a valley between 2 mountain ranges, a collection of prefabricated buildings surrounded by a fence that would stop nothing determined to get inside. Humanity had built it here because this was neutral ground, a place where the Vraxen and the Sithrak could meet without immediately tearing each other apart. Both species were apex predators, evolved on death worlds that made Earth look like a garden planet. The Vraxen stood 8 feet tall, with scaled hides the color of dried blood and retractable claws that could punch through steel. The Sithrak were leaner, faster, covered in black fur with yellow eyes that tracked movement in complete darkness. Both species looked at humans the way humans might look at rabbits. Something small and soft and barely worth noticing. Laura had grown used to the looks of contempt, the dismissive gestures, the way the predator delegates would bare their fangs when she walked past. She did not care what they thought of her. She was not here to make friends or earn respect. She was here because her younger brother Danny had died 2 years ago in an accident she could have prevented. And some part of her believed she deserved to be somewhere dangerous, somewhere she might be useful, somewhere she might make up for the life she had failed to save. The alarm on her medical tablet pulled her from her thoughts, and she turned to see a Vraxen warrior limping through the outpost gates. His name was Garth, and he was bleeding from a wound on his leg that looked like something had tried to bite it off. Laura grabbed her kit and ran toward him, ignoring the way his golden eyes narrowed with distrust as she approached. "Let me help you," she said, keeping her voice calm and steady. "I do not need help from prey," Garth growled. But his leg buckled under him, and he nearly fell. Laura caught his arm and guided him toward the medical station. Surprised that he let her, he was easily 3 times her weight and could have killed her with a single swipe of his claws. But he allowed this small human to lead him inside and sit him down on a table that groaned under his mass. "What happened?" she asked as she examined the wound. "Sithrak patrol," he said through clenched fangs. "They are getting bolder, crossing into our territory, testing our strength." Lavra cleaned the wound and began stitching it closed, her hands steady despite the predator watching her every move with an expression caught between suspicion and curiosity. "You do not flinch," Garth observed. "Should I? Most prey species cannot stand the sight of blood." Lavra smiled without humor as she worked. "I have seen plenty of blood, and I have learned that flinching does not make it go away." When she finished, Garth flexed his leg experimentally and made a sound that might have been approval. "You have skill," he admitted. "But do not mistake this for friendship, human. And do not think your kindness will earn you anything here." "I did not help you to earn anything," Lavra said, packing away her supplies. "I helped you because you were hurt, and I could fix it." Garth stared at her for a long moment, his golden eyes unreadable. "Kindness is weakness in our culture," he said finally. "It will get you killed." He left without another word, and Lavra watched him go with a feeling she could not name settling in her chest. That night, she learned something that changed everything. The Vraxen delegation had brought their cubs to the outpost. This was forbidden under every treaty humanity had negotiated. Dangerous beyond measure, and it signaled a desperation that made Laura's stomach clench with worry. There were 3 of them, small by Vraxen standards, but still larger than human children, with scales that had not yet hardened and eyes too big for their faces. They were hidden in the Vraxen quarters, but Lavra had seen them through a window while making her rounds. Three small shapes huddled together in the corner of a room, while adult warriors stood guard. Outside, she understood immediately what this meant. The Vraxen were afraid something had driven them to bring their most vulnerable members to a neutral outpost rather than leave them at home. And there was only one threat in this region capable of inspiring that kind of fear. The Sithrak were planning something. Laura reported what she had seen to Commander Daniels, who listened with a grim expression and told her to mind her own business. The Vraxen internal affairs are not our concern, he said. We are here to facilitate diplomacy, not to get involved in their wars. Lavra wanted to argue, but she knew it would do no good. She was just a medic, just a human, just prey in the eyes of everyone who mattered on this world. But as she walked back to her quarters that night, she paused at the edge of the outpost and looked toward the tree line where the forest began. Something moved in the shadows there. Yellow eyes caught the moonlight for just a moment before disappearing into the darkness. Sithrak scouts. They were watching the outpost, watching and waiting. And Lavra knew with terrible certainty that they had seen the cubs too. She stood there until the cold wind drove her inside, her heart heavy with the knowledge that something awful was coming, and she had no power to stop it. But she was wrong about that last part. She had more power than she knew, more courage than anyone suspected, and before this was over, she would teach every predator in the galaxy what it truly meant to be strong. 3 days passed, and Laura found herself drawn to the Vraxen quarters, despite every warning she had been given. Cubs had noticed her too, the first time she walked past their window. The smallest one pressed its face against the glass and watched her with wide golden eyes full of curiosity. Rather than contempt, Laura smiled and waved, and the cub made a chirping sound that she later learned was Vraxen laughter. By the second day, she had learned their names. The oldest was Keth, already showing the proud bearing of a warrior in training. His scales darker than his siblings and his claws beginning to harden. The middle child was Sora, female and fierce, who challenged everything and everyone with a spirit that reminded Lavra painfully of her brother Danny. The youngest was Ven, shy and gentle, more interested in watching insects than learning to hunt. Their guardian was a warrior named Thyssen, who tolerated Laura's presence with visible displeasure, but did not chase her away. I should not speak to you, Thyssen said on the third day, watching as Laura taught the cubs a human game called hide and seek. You make them soft. I make them happy, Lavra replied. Is that so terrible? Happiness does not keep you alive on Vraxen Prime, Thyssen said. Strength keeps you alive, and strength comes from hardship, not from playing games with prey species. But even as she spoke, there was something uncertain in her voice, something that suggested she was not entirely convinced of her own words. The cubs taught Lavra things too. They showed her the basic Vraxen hunting signals, the hand gestures and low growls that allowed a pack to coordinate without speaking. They taught her which plants in the outpost garden were safe to eat and which would kill her in seconds. They taught her that predators could be curious and playful and kind, even when their culture told them kindness was weakness. On the evening of the third day, Elder Korath came to find Laura. He was the clan leader, the father of all 3 cubs, and he towered over her like a mountain of scales and barely contained violence. You will stay away from my children, he said, his voice a deep rumble that Lavra felt in her bones. They enjoy my company, Lavra said, refusing to back down, even though every survival instinct screamed at her to run. That is precisely the problem, Korath growled. You are teaching them to trust prey, to see weakness as strength, to believe that kindness can protect them. Can it not? Korath laughed, a harsh sound like stones grinding together. You humans understand nothing, and you have survived in this galaxy only because you are too insignificant to threaten anyone. Maybe, Lavra said. Or maybe you are wrong about what strength really means. Strength means the power to kill your enemies before they kill you, Korath said. Strength means never showing vulnerability, never caring for those who cannot defend themselves. Then what are your cubs doing here? Lara asked quietly. The question hit Korath like a physical blow. And for a moment, his golden eyes widened with something that looked almost like shame. That is none of your concern, he said finally. The Sithrak are coming for them, Lara said. I have seen scouts in the forest, watching the outpost. And we both know why your cubs are here instead of safe on your homeworld. Korath was silent for a long moment. And when he spoke again, his voice was heavy with exhaustion. The Sithrak attacked our nursery world, he said. They slaughtered hundreds of cubs before we could respond. And my children survived only because I brought them here where I thought they would be safe. But they found you. Yes, Korath admitted. They found us, and now they will come to finish what they started. Sithrak messenger arrived at the outpost the next morning. He was tall and lean with black fur that seemed to absorb the light and yellow eyes that never stopped moving. He carried no weapons, but he did not need them because his claws were weapons enough. Surrender the cubs, he said to the assembled delegates. Give them to us, and we will leave this outpost in peace. But if you refuse, then we will take them and kill everyone who stands in our way. The Vraxan warriors roared their defiance. But Lara could see the fear beneath their anger. They were outnumbered badly. And everyone knew it. Commander Daniels ordered an immediate evacuation of all human personnel. This is not our fight, he said. We are leaving tonight. And anyone who stays behind does so against orders. Lara watched the Vraxan prepare for their final stand. Watched Elder Korath embrace his children one last time before sending them away with Thiessen through an unguarded mountain pass that would lead them to safety. But Lara knew something the Vraxan did not. She had seen Sithrak scouts in those mountains 3 days ago, watching that same pass with hungry yellow eyes. The pass was not unguarded, and it was a trap. Lara tried to warn them, but no one would listen to a human to pray to someone so far beneath their notice that her words carried no weight at all. So she made a choice, while the other humans boarded the evacuation shuttles. While Commander Daniels called her name with growing anger, Lara slipped away into the darkness. She followed the sound of small feet through the forest, tracking the Guardian and the 3 cubs she had come to love like her own family behind her. The outpost erupted in the sounds of battle as the Sithrak attacked, but Lara did not look back. She ran toward the mountains with nothing but her medical kit and a desperate hope that she would reach the cubs before the trap closed around them. The mountain pass was narrow and treacherous, carved by ancient rivers through stone that rose on either side like the walls of a grave. Lara ran through the darkness with her lungs burning and her legs screaming for rest. But she did not slow down because somewhere ahead of her 3 children were walking into a trap. She heard the ambush before she saw a single scream cut through the night. High and terrified, followed by the sounds of combat that ended as quickly as it began, Lara pushed herself harder, crashing through underbrush and scrambling over rocks, until she burst into a small clearing and saw the nightmare waiting for her. Thiessen was dead. The warrior who had guarded the cubs lay broken on the ground with her throat torn out, her golden eyes staring at nothing while her blood soaked into the mountain soil. Around her stood 6 Sithrak hunters, their black fur blending with the shadows and their yellow eyes fixed on the 3 cubs. Huddled against a boulder, Keth stood in front of his siblings with his claws extended, trying to look brave even though he was shaking with terror. Sora clutched Ven behind her. The fierce little female reduced to silent tears as she watched death approach. The Sithrak were taking their time, enjoying the fear of their prey, savoring the moment before the kill. They never saw Lara coming. She hit the nearest hunter at a full sprint, driving her shoulder into his legs and sending him tumbling into his companions in the chaos that followed. She grabbed Keth by the arm and screamed a single word that needed no translation. Run! The cubs ran, and Lavra ran with them, pulling them through the darkness. While the Sithrak recovered and gave chase, she could hear them behind her. 6 hunters bred for exactly this kind of pursuit. Faster and stronger and deadlier than any human had a right to challenge, but Lavra had something they did not expect. She had grown up camping in the mountains of Colorado with her father, learning to track and trap and survive in wilderness that could kill the unprepared. She had spent 6 months studying this planet, memorizing its terrain, learning which plants were poisonous and which caves led nowhere, and she had watched the Sithrak scouts for 3 days, learning their patterns, noting their weaknesses, understanding how they thought. The first trap was simple. She led the cubs through a patch of thorn vines that she knew would slow the Sithrak, but barely touched. Racks and scales, 2 hunters fell behind, tangled in the vines and cursing in their harsh language. The second trap was crueler. She doubled back to a narrow gap between 2 boulders and waited until the lead hunter squeezed through. Then she jammed her medical laser into his eye and burned through to his brain. He died without a sound, and his body blocked the gap long enough for Laura and the cubs to gain precious distance. How did you do that? Keth gasped as they ran. Humans are not as weak as you think. Lavra said the third trap nearly killed her. She led them across a frozen stream, knowing the ice would hold the lightweight cubs, but gambling that it might crack under. A heavier pursuer, 2 Sithrak, plunged through into water cold enough to stop their hearts. But the third made it across and caught Laura by the ankle. His claws tore through her boot and into her flesh, and she screamed as he dragged her back toward him. With hungry yellow eyes, Sora saved her. Fierce little Raxan female launched herself at the hunter with claws extended, raking across his face and blinding him in one eye. Laura kicked free and drove her heel into his throat, crushing something vital, and they left him choking in the snow as they fled into the darkness. Only 2 hunters remained, but 2 was still enough to kill them all. Laura found the cave as dawn began to lighten the sky. It was small and deep, with a narrow entrance that only one attacker could pass. Through it at a time, she pushed the cubs inside and turned to face the entrance with nothing but a rock in one hand and her medical kit in the other. Stay behind me, she said. When I tell you to run, you run and you do not look back. We will not leave you, Keth said. You have to. No, Sora said, her voice stronger now despite the blood on her claws. You came back for us when no one else would. You fought for us when everyone said we were not worth saving. And we will not abandon you. Lara felt tears burning in her eyes, but she blinked them away. I am going to protect you, she said. That is what I came here to do. And I will do it until I cannot do it anymore. Then we will protect you too, Ven said quietly, the shy little cub stepping forward to stand beside his siblings. Thiessen said, you are Pack now, and Pack does not leave Pack behind. Lara wanted to argue, wanted to tell them to save themselves, wanted to be the hero who sacrificed everything so they could live, but she looked at their faces, at the determination in their golden eyes, and she understood something important. She was not alone. She had never been alone. The first Sithrak appeared at the cave entrance, his yellow eyes gleaming with hatred and hunger. Laura raised her rock and prepared to fight. Worth dying for, she whispered. And she did not know if she was talking about the cubs or about herself or about something bigger than both. The hunter charged, and Laura met him with everything she had left. The first hunter died harder than Laura expected. He came through the cave entrance fast and low, expecting easy prey, expecting the soft human to crumble before his claws like every other prey species he had ever hunted. He was wrong. Laura smashed her rock into his temple with every ounce of strength she possessed, and when he staggered, she drove her fingers into his throat and tore. She had studied anatomy for years, had memorized the placement of every vein and artery in a dozen species, had learned where life flowed and where it could be stopped. The Sithrak gurgled and fell, and Laura stood over his body with blood dripping from her hands and fire burning in her eyes. The second hunter paused at the entrance, suddenly uncertain. This was not how prey was supposed to behave. "Come on," Laura said, her voice steady despite the fear screaming in her chest. "Come and get us if you can." He came. The fight was brutal and one-sided, and Laura knew from the first moment that she could not win. The Sithrak was bigger, faster, stronger, trained from birth to kill, while Laura had trained only to heal. His claws raked across her ribs, and she felt bones crack. His fangs found her shoulder and tore through muscle. She fell, and he stood over her with triumph blazing in his yellow eyes. But Laura had not stopped fighting. She had only needed him close enough. Her medical laser punched through his chest from below, burning a hole through his heart, and she watched the light fade from his eyes as he collapsed on top of her. She pushed his body aside and tried to stand, but her legs would not hold. Her blood was pouring from wounds she could not count, and she knew with the clarity of a trained medic that she was dying. "Laura!" Keth was beside her, his young face twisted with fear and grief. "Laura, you have to get up. You have to let us help you. It is okay," she said, reaching up to touch his scaled cheek. "It is okay. I did what I came to do." "No," Sora said. "You cannot die. You cannot leave us. You promised you would protect us." "And I did." Laura smiled, and it hurt, but she did not care. "You are safe now. You are going to live. And that is all that matters." She could hear something in the distance, the sound of voices and running feet, but it seemed very far away. The cave was getting darker. Or maybe that was just her eyes failing, and she was so tired. So very tired. "Listen to me," she said, and the cubs leaned close to hear her fading voice. "Listen, because this is important." "We are listening," Ven whispered, tears streaming down his small face. "Strength is not about killing," Laura said. "Strength is not about being the biggest or the fastest or the most dangerous. Real strength is about protecting the people who cannot protect themselves. It is about standing up when everyone else runs away. It is about choosing to love even when love is hard." "We understand," Keth said. "Do you?" "Yes," the oldest cub said, and there was something different in his voice now. Something older and wiser than a child should sound. "We understand because you showed us. You showed us what real strength looks like." Laura closed her eyes, and for a moment she saw her brother Danny standing in a field of golden light with his arms open and his smile bright. She was not afraid anymore. "Take care of each other," she whispered. "Be kind, be brave, be good, and remember that you were worth it. You were worth everything." The voices outside were louder now, and Laura heard a roar that sounded like grief and rage combined into a single terrible sound. Elder Korith burst into the cave with a dozen Raxan warriors behind him, their scales splashed with Sithrak blood and their eyes wild with the aftermath of battle. He stopped when he saw Laura lying on the ground with his children gathered around her like mourners at a funeral. "No," he said. The word ripped from somewhere deep inside him. "No, this cannot be. She saved us," Keth said, looking up at his father with eyes that held no more childhood in them. "The Sithrak were going to kill us, but she came, she fought them. She would not stop fighting until they were all dead." Karth knelt beside Laura and lifted her broken body with a gentleness that seemed impossible for a creature so large and deadly. "Why?" he asked, even though he knew she could no longer hear him. "Why would you do this? Why would prey sacrifice herself for predator cubs? Why would you give your life for children that were not even your own species?" "She said we were worth dying for," Sora answered. "She said protecting the helpless is the only strength that matters." Karth held Laura close, and for the first time in his long life, the great predator wept. wept for the human who had challenged everything he believed about strength and weakness. He wept for the courage he had dismissed as foolishness. He wept for the debt he could never repay and the lesson he had learned too late around him. His warriors stood in silence, their heads bowed in respect for the fallen human. None of them had ever seen their leader cry before. None of them had ever imagined that a prey species could teach a predator what it truly meant to be brave. The suns rose over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, and Elder Korath carried Laura Bennett out of the cave and into the light. She had died as she had lived, fighting for those who could not fight for themselves, giving everything she had so that others might survive, and the Vraxen would never forget her. 1 year after Laura Bennett died in a cave on Vareth 4, Elder Korath stood before the assembled clans of the Vraxen homeworld and spoke words that would change his species forever. The great hall was filled with thousands of warriors, their scaled hides gleaming under ceremonial lights and their golden eyes fixed on their leader with expressions of confusion and curiosity. They had been summoned for something important, but none of them knew what it could be. Korath held up a blade. It was forged from the strongest metal on their world, curved in the traditional hunting style that Vraxen warriors had carried for 10,000 years. But this blade was different, etched along its length in the sacred script reserved only for their greatest heroes was a name that did not belong to any Vraxen. Laura Bennett. You know this name, Korath said, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall. You have heard the story of what she did on Vareth 4, how she defied her own people to save my children, how she fought and killed enemies twice, her size with nothing but her bare hands, and her refusal to surrender. The warriors shifted and murmured, still uncertain where this was going. For generations we have believed that strength means the power to kill. Korath continued. We have taught our children that kindness is weakness, that caring for others makes you vulnerable, that the only true warrior is one who feels nothing for anyone. He looked down at the blade in his hands, at the human name etched into the metal. We were wrong. Silence fell over the hall like a heavy blanket. Laura Bennett was prey by every measure we have ever used, Korath said. She was small and soft and fragile. She had no claws and no fangs and no armor. And by our laws she should have been nothing more than food. He raised his eyes to meet the gazes of his people. But she showed more courage than any predator I have ever known. She faced certain death without flinching. She fought for children who were not her own species because she believed that protecting the innocent is what strength really means. Korath thrust the blade toward the sky. From this day forward, every Vraxen who comes of age will receive a blade bearing her name, and they will carry it into every battle as a reminder of what true strength looks like. And they will teach their children that the greatest warrior is not the one who kills the most enemies, but the one who protects those who cannot protect themselves. The hall erupted. Some warriors roared in approval, moved by the story of the human who had saved their leader's children. Others growled in protest, unwilling to accept that a prey species could teach them anything. But Korath stood firm, and beside him stood his 3 children, no longer cubs but young warriors in their own right, each of them carrying a blade etched with the name of the human who had given her life for theirs. She was Pack, Keth said, stepping forward to address the crowd. She was one of us in every way that matters, and we will honor her until the stars grow cold. The tradition took root slowly at first, adopted only by those clans closest to Korath and his family. But as the years passed and the story spread, more and more Vraxen chose to carry blades bearing Laura Bennett's name. They told stories about her to their children, about the human who ran toward danger when everyone else ran away, about the prey who taught predators the meaning of courage 100 years after her death. Every Vraxen warrior in the galaxy carried her name into battle 200 years later. Other predator species began adopting the custom, moved by the legend of the human who had proven that strength comes from the heart rather than from claws or fangs. 300 years after Laura Bennett died in a cave on Vareth 4, a human ambassador named Director Chen visited the Vraxan homeworld for a diplomatic summit. He was taken to a shrine in the heart of the capital city, a place of quiet beauty surrounded by gardens and fountains and the soft singing of wind through crystal chimes. In the center of the shrine stood a statuette, showed a human woman standing with her arms spread wide, shielding 3 small figures behind her. Her face set in an expression of fierce determination, and her feet were piled thousands of blades, gifts from warriors who had come to pay their respects, each one etched with her name. "We have maintained this place for 300 years, the Vraxan guide said. "Every warrior who comes of age makes a pilgrimage here to leave their training blade and receive their true weapon." Director Chun stood before the statue with tears in his eyes. "I did not know," he said. "I did not know she was so honored here. She changed us," the guide said simply. "She showed us that we had been wrong about everything. About strength and weakness, about predator and prey, about what it means to be worthy of remembrance." That night, a young Vraxan warrior named Sereth prepared for her first battle against raiders who had attacked a colony of peaceful herbivores. She drew her blade and looked at the name etched along its length, the human letters that every Vraxan child learned to read before they could read. Their own language Laura Bennett Sareth did not know much about the human whose name she carried. She knew only that this woman had died protecting children who were not her own, that she had fought until her body gave out and then fought some more, that she had proven to an entire galaxy that true courage has nothing to do with size or species or the sharpness of your claws. "Worth dying for," Sereth whispered, the words that had become a battle cry for her people. Then she charged into battle to protect the innocent, carrying a blade etched with the name of a human who had taught the greatest predators in the galaxy what it truly meant to be brave, and across 1,000 worlds, on 1,000 battlefields, warriors of every predator species drew their blades and saw that name gleaming in the light. Laura Bennett, the human who died defending predator cubs, the prey who became legend, the woman who proved that the smallest and softest and most fragile of creatures can possess a strength that moves the stars themselves. Her story would be told for 1,000 years more, and her name would never be forgotten. And somewhere in whatever place, good souls go when their bodies fail. Laura Bennett smiled. She had asked for nothing but the chance to save 3 children who needed her. She had received something far greater. She had received eternity.